There. So, all right. Well, welcome everybody to Full Stack Development with Jetbrains Rider. I've been using Jetbrains Rider since 2017 full time, and I love getting the opportunity to talk about it because I think it's just a great development environment. I think it helps make me more productive, and I want others to give it a try. So. Why do I use Rider? Initially, I was having some performance issues with Visual Studio plus ReSharper. It was a little slower than I liked. And I thought, well, I'll just give this Rider thing a try. And as soon as I tried it and got using some of the features that I'm going to show you today, I didn't look back. I thought it was a really great tool. If you're already paying for ReSharper, then I think it's really affordable to move to Rider, and it's cross-platform. So I do some work on Mac and Linux as well, and it's just really great to be able to use Rider everywhere and not have to change tools just because I'm changing the computer that I'm using. So today we're going to kind of look at things with the lens of full stack development, which is something I think Rider really excels at. We're going to work right from the source control integration all the way through backend, front end, and talk about some testing and some cross-cutting features. So with that, let's see if we can get started. So here is the JetBrains Rider IDE, and I'm going to be going through a basic full stack web application that is a .NET Core Web API with an Angular and Ionic front end. And it's also based on SQL Server, which you'll see a little bit about in a few minutes. So let's see. So starting off, the first thing you need when you need to do full stack development is you need source control integration. So Rider's source control integration is really good. I've used a few other tools in the past, and I find that I really don't have to leave Rider to work with Git. It's a really good integration. So let's go through some of the features real quick. The first thing is you need to be able to get a hold of your source code. So Rider has a really great integration for working with GitHub, working with Visual Studio DevOps, or just plain old any repository URL. When you clone, it'll pull the code down and then open Rider up right into the solution or the application, which is really nice. If you want to, I use it often with GitHub. You have a sample you want to try out or see how something works. It's really easy to just quickly pull it down and start working with the code right away. Once you have your code pulled down at the bottom here, there you can bring up the tab that shows the Git integration. It's fairly standard, but there's a couple features that I think kind of stand out. The standard stuff, you've got your branches, you've got your history, you've also got this nice path of your history, which a lot of tools have now, but Rider has it too. It's really great to see how branches come together and merge. When you click on something in the history, you can see all your changes to the right, which is, it's great. You can just work your way through and see what might have happened. If you click on a particular change, it opens the Rider diff window, which is great. It shows your changes, your additions and subtractions. It can do both side by side and unified. So you can, whichever way, sometimes one works better than the other. I'm going to look a little bit more at this when we go to commit changes, but just starting off, this is the diff viewer and kind of what it looks like. So down in here, one of the features that I really like is that you can search. So you can quickly search your history by just typing. It's really fast. It's great for when you're trying to figure out something that happened in the past. Maybe you're looking for an item number, maybe you're looking for just something that you mentioned, so you can go back and see how you made a change. That search works really well. Another neat feature that I like in Rider is that with your branches, you can select any particular branch to only show in the view, but you can also do multiple branches. So we can do, you can type, it auto completes. You can look at 2 branches at the same time. You hit Control Enter, and it filters everything that you see down to those branches, which is, again, great for the type of thing that I do a lot, which is figuring out what happened. If you can narrow your lens down using these search features, it makes it a lot easier. Going along with that is another feature that's called paths. This lets you focus down on a particular area of your repository. So I can hit select folders, and it shows me all the folders within my repository. So if I wanted to say I only want to see changes that happened in my tests, I can select the test integration and show only the changes that happened in there. Just another handy feature. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to show. I think that's pretty much it for there. Now we'll move into how the source control integration works within editing a file. So I'm going to hit Control T. You can see right here the thing, search everywhere, Control T. This is, I'll show more about this a little bit later too, but you can type in anything and it'll find it all over Rider, whether it's in the code, whether it's in the menus, that sort of thing. It's really handy. So once you're within the code, at the top of like a method, you can see who made the latest changes. You can also click on that, and it will show you what change was made and a nice history. A thing I use a lot is the annotation, or the blame, sometimes it's called. You can right-click on the side here and hit Annotate. It'll show you all the changes right there really quickly. You can hover over it. It'll show you the message of the commit. You can right-click on it and show diff. And again, like we saw the viewer before, it opens this diff viewer that lets you see all the changes that were made, which is pretty handy. Now we can close these annotations the same way we opened them. If I make a couple of changes to this file and comment something out and save it, the next thing you do with source control is you want to commit your changes. So they have a commit tab over here at the left. It shows all the files that were changed. It'll also, if there are new files, it will show those. And each one, when you click on it, it shows you, again, the familiar diff tool, but this time it has more options in it. So this time it shows that I added a couple lines here, and it shows that I commented this code out. So within here, you can revert just single changes by clicking on these double arrows, or you can select only certain things to commit. And this is awesome if you've made a bunch of changes and you really want to do some atomic commits and only commit changes that are similar to each other, then this checkbox is great. I use it all the time to go through here. Also, when you're going through reviewing your changes, it's nice you can actually make changes right over here. So, a lot of times I'll be looking through my changes to commit them and see that I forgot to remove a comment, or I have an extra new line somewhere, and I can just go through and look at my changes and quickly just clean them up and make them better. Once you've decided what you want to commit, you come back over to the left and you can put your commit message. But there's a couple features over here, and make this bigger, that I like a lot. One is this history. You can see all of your commit messages that you put in before. And if you might be committing, you might have done a commit and realized you left out a file. You can quickly go back and grab the same commit message. You might want to look back at, oh, what was that item number I was working with? You can just look through there quickly. It's just a neat feature. The one thing about Rider is these little features are all over the place, and they just combine together to make a better experience when you're doing your development. Another neat thing here is the integration with Visual Studio DevOps. So I think this is an extension, but if I'm working in a DevOps project, I can easily find the items I'm working with in here, and then it'll add them to the commit message, so that way your changes are all linked to the item you're working on, and it makes everything a lot cleaner. Okay, so that's most of the version control features that I wanted to show. I'm going to revert these changes here, so those go away, and then close a few things. So the next integration I want to show is for the Node Package Manager. So this is mostly used in the front-end world for bringing in packages for JavaScript. But it can also be used to run commands. They call them scripts. And what's nice about Rider is you can have multiple package.json files, they call it. That's the file that's used to show the packages that are used for Node Package Manager. You can have more than one in your project, and it works just fine. In this project, I'm actually using one for my front end, and I have one for my database side so that I can run Docker easily, because this project, the backend database, runs in a Docker container, and it's super easy to just quickly access my NPM scripts and open them. From within here, not only can you run your scripts, but you can easily right-click and jump to source, and it'll show you the package file and everything in it. It'll also, here you can see the scripts area that I was talking about. Those are the scripts that are shown on the left, and in this case, it calls a Docker compose command. So just a simple thing, but it's really handy, and I use it all the time. So now we're going to just run this npm command and bring up the local database, because the next thing we're going to look at is the database integration in Rider. All right, so we'll let that keep going, and then close that down. On the right side is where I have it configured. You can move these menus all over the place, but I have it on the right side, is the database tab. The Rider has lots of integration for different data sources. I'm using SQL Server for this one, but as you can see, there's lots of others. I've used a lot of database tools, from the Microsoft tools to plugins to all kinds of stuff. And Rider is my favorite tool, and I believe it's available as a separate tool called DataGrip. If you're just using databases, you can get it separately, but it's a really great tool. Here I have it connected to my local SQL database. One thing to note on this is it caches all the information about the database, so it's really fast. One thing about that is to keep in mind is that sometimes it might get out of date with your database. So it's always a good idea to right-click and refresh the cache when you're working in here, because you might have a table that was there and not. And as you saw, just the table, I think if you were watching a table, just went away because I had added one in my testing and removed it from the database, but it was still in the cache. So something that can trip people up sometimes. Another thing that tripped me up when I was starting with this is that you can filter what databases are shown for your particular server by clicking on this number. So there's 2 of 13 are being shown here. I'm showing the schema DBO and sys, but I'm not showing any of these other schemas. Same thing up here as you can filter out your data sources or your databases. When you first start, they might not be selected, and you might not see anything here and think it's not working, but you just have to select that and filter. And once you know about it, it's actually pretty handy to be able to scope it down and not show too much information. So from within here, it's fairly standard. And you can see your tables, store procedures, functions, and look at all the details about them. A nice feature in Rider is the ability to show a diagram of your database. This is super handy if you're working with an unfamiliar data model, or you want to learn more about how the relationships of the data work. You can make some quick changes in here to show only the IDs or all the fields. So if you have a ton of tables, this is nice for filtering it down. Also, it's tough. It's not as obvious in this tiny database, but they have a lot of layout options that you can use. So depending on the way your database is laid out, there may be some other layout that makes a lot more sense in how to show your data. So it's nice that it has these options, and you can print it, you can export it. So yeah, it's a neat little feature. The next thing that you might want to do from within here is actually work with your database. So for the database integration, there's this idea of a console. The console is the code. It's saved as part of the project. You can have as many as you want. You can make them different for different reasons. Excuse me. So from within here, you have some really nice features. So you can have a bunch here already out, but if you type SEL and hit tab, it'll quickly show you. See if this will move up my screen. Oh, there we go. I can scroll it. So it'll show you what you can select from, and it'll show you all kinds of information about your database. And I got a connection failed to my database, so I'm gonna have to look at that before we try running this thing. I might have had a problem with bringing up my database, but we'll keep moving and see how it goes. But from within here is really nice because you can quickly scroll through all of your tables, see information about them, and you can hit tab, and it'll pick it for you. From up here, you can hit Control Space, see all your fields, and easily select them. As you're going through your fields, again, more information shows to the right. It's just kind of this nice lens into how everything works in your database. If you see if we can even run a query, I may have to go see. Oh, it's working, I guess. I'm not sure what that was about. Well, that's good. That'll make the demo better. So as you run your code, your scripts, you can see your results show up down here. There's a couple features I'll show. You can sort, filter, do all kinds of things in here. You can export this data. But one thing that's really neat is if I select, I'll show you, I didn't really talk about this. If I hit Control Enter, I can pick what I want to run, which is cool. So if I have a big query with a subquery and I hit Control Enter, I can run just the subquery or I can run the whole query. It's pretty flexible that way. So I'm just going to run this one. So I've got, I also have this set up to open a new tab for every query that I run. You can change that, but that's how I like to do it. Now I'm going to run it again with a different set of data, just to kind of show that this neat feature that you can use. You can compare any result set to any other result set and show the diffs for those. So I'm in 10, I can compare that to 9. It opens up this nice diff here. Now you can do this not only within the same database, but if you have multiple data sources, if you're looking at a production data source and a development data source, you can run a query in each and you can compare the results for those. Inside here, you can set the tolerance level that tells you what means these rows are different. So at this point, it's saying, it's all blue. It says these are different. These are different. It would highlight them in a list. If I had a lot of data, it would show if one was added and one was deleted. But I can increase the tolerance to say, well, if 4 things are different, this row may still be the same, but show me what's different about it. And this is really powerful because here you can see exactly which fields are different in these 2 data sets. And depending on what you're working on, you might not, this may or may not be a neat thing for you, but for me, if I need to look at what might have changed, if I'm going back to look into a problem and I might need to see what might have changed in some data set, this is a super handy feature. Let's see. So the next thing, the integration with the database also, there's some other nice features. You can easily create tables within the database, and depending on what you like to do or how you like to go about it, we can do, I don't know, route photos. You can see down here as I type, it's creating the SQL script for me. I can add an ID column. I can make it my primary key, and all this stuff gets added here. Now we can just copy we can hit Control-All and just copy this. We can execute it in the database. We can run it to a script. There's lots of things you can do. If I execute it, then we'll see it show up in the database. I think I clicked execute twice, so we'll see what happens. It's going to refresh. I might have broken something when I clicked that twice, but oh, there we go. Okay, so here's our new table. So there it is in the database. Now it's there, but moving forward, what if I want to? How do I get that to where I want it to be? In this project, I have something called dbup set up that I script my changes, and then when we go to deploy in production, those changes get applied to the database. So in order to do that, I need to get a script of the table. To do that, we can easily right-click on any object in here, and we can generate the script for it from here. And then we can easily move that script into where we want to use it. Also, along the same lines, you can export data the same way. So if I have, say I added some test data to this database or some new lookup information, you can click export, and you can decide how you want to export. Sometimes you might want something comma separated in a file, or you can do, a lot of times I'll do inserts because that's the patterns that I'm using. And you can easily just export this out, put it as part of your build deployment process, and then have the data available when you need it. All right, so let's see, I'm going to close that down. So, okay, so the next thing I want to show is just some more cross-cutting things about the navigation in Rider. So Rider has a solution explorer, and it's similar to what you see in Visual Studio. But some of the nice features in here is you can show all files, so you can quickly see everything, not just what's in the solution. And another way to do that, there's also this file system explorer. So sometimes if you're working, especially in a front-end project, there is no solution, there is no project, but you can still work with all your tools and everything by just showing the files in that way. Another thing that's nice in here is this assembly viewer. You can pick an assembly. I use embedded resources in assemblies for test cases sometimes, and if you use the assembly viewer, you can open and compile assembly and see what resources are in there, see more information about it. So depending on what you're doing, that can be pretty handy. Another feature in here that I really like is no matter where you are, you can right-click and say Show and Explore. So in some IDs, it depends on what you're clicking on, if you can do that or not, but this you can do it all over the place. Another great feature is Copy Path. So if I'm on a particular file, I can copy the path, and it'll give me these options. I can do an absolute, I can do a relative from the repository root. So if you need to reference a file within your code, you can quickly just right-click on it and get that. So I think that's really handy. The consoles for the database that we talked about are also all listed in here. So you can rename these, you can add more. If I had more data sources here, they would show here as well. So that's a pretty neat feature too. You can also do something in here. You can start typing, and it will highlight and move your way through the code, which is neat. But one thing I think it should do better is it only looks at what's visible. I would like it to be recursive through the folders this way. I think that would be kind of a neat feature. So, all right, let's see. So the next thing we'll go through, I want to talk a little bit more about this Control-T window. So not only can you find files in here or classes, but you also find database tables. If your database has been indexed, you can find the database. You can find You can also find actions. So if I want to enter presentation mode, I can type presentation mode and quickly move around in here. So yeah, so you can just kind of search around anywhere in here and use this all window. I just basically use it all the time just to move around. So I'm going to open a backend file now, so we can go through a couple of things in here to talk about how things that I like in here. So the first thing is at the top, you have these really nice breadcrumbs that show where the file is in your solution. So as you're navigating around, you can quickly tell where you are. And then on the bottom, same idea, except part of your namespace and your class and your method shows down at the bottom. So that's just really handy when you're moving around in a big code base and you want to see, well, where am I? I forget, and you can look and go through the different breadcrumbs. Something in here that I think somebody else might talk about today is refactoring, so I won't go much into that, but you can refactor out sections of code into new methods, which is great. One thing that I use fairly often is I can right-click refactor and change a signature. And what this allows you to do is add more. I can add a string, new variable, and then it will modify the signature. But what the neat part is this part right here. If I modify my signature, obviously all the calls to that method need to be modified. You can not do anything, but you can also make changes or even add a value in there. So recently I made a change to a signature where I wanted most areas. There were a lot of calls to that, and most of them I just wanted to add a new method to say new this to pass in. Some of them I didn't. I was able to use this to make the change in just a couple seconds instead of having to go through to every method call and fix it and find all the problems. So that's a really neat refactor feature that I used recently that I think is cool. But all the resharper stuff that you normally think about is all in here, and you can use it just the same way. Let's see. Okay, so the next thing I think is really cool is if we go to if we type controller in here, you can see that it also doesn't search just from the beginning of the name. It'll find it anywhere, which is really nice. And then inside the controller, so waypoint controller is my code that I wrote for this, but controller base is not. Well, in Rider, if you don't have the source code, if it's not your source code, you can still hit F12, and it'll download the symbols for that external code. This is awesome because how often do you have a base class or a method or a library that you're working with, and you just kind of need to know what it's doing so that you can work it better with your code? Well, in here I've gotten so used to this that when I go to another tool, and I can't do it, it's really like, whoa. I forget how much I love that. So, that's really cool. Let's see what else we've got here. So here's another feature that I think is just a killer one in Rider. If you hit Control-Shift-F for Find All, you can search within, this is like find in everything. So you can search within your solution project directory for a search term. You can do it by regular expression. You can do it in lots of different ways. What's really great about it is after you've done your search, make this a little bit bigger, you can see that, let's see, make it a little smaller. So you can see what files you found it with on the right, and if it's more than one in a single file, it grays out the rest. So you can kind of quickly key on that. As you work your way through, you can see the code quickly down below. You saw how fast it is. Even with bigger projects, this is just as fast. You can quickly work your way through here. You can actually make changes down here as you're working. So it's just like you can stay right in this one spot. Another neat feature part of this, if I hit Control-Shift-H for replace, and I do a regular expression replacement. Let's see, I need to put parentheses around this expression. So yeah, so I kind of was working on this before, so you see that it's already in here. But with regular expressions, you'd use $1 for your first match, and then you can modify from there with your replace. Well, down here, as you're working your way through what you want to replace, it shows you what it's actually going to replace. And this is really great. I mean, here's a super simple example, but regular expressions can get pretty complicated. And when you're trying to do a find and replace all over the place, maybe it's really great to just see, oh, this is exactly what it's going to put in here if I say replace. So it's just that. So once you're in here, if you want to keep working with this find set, you can say open in find window at the bottom, and it will open. It's searching for me. There we go. It will open the results in the find window. Yeah, here we go. So it looks funny because I have this zoomed in so much for this presentation, but let me see if I can make it a little clearer. Basically, it'll open it up down in this find window, and then in this window you still have tons of options for showing what class it's in, whether it's a read or a write. It's you can navigate all over the place from here. Let's see. So now let's look at a little bit of front end stuff. I'm going to Control-T again, and I'm going to open up a Typescript file. So this is an Angular type component, and this is basically can be used like a custom tag in HTML. So this is a component that you can put in your HTML, and it will show something. And when you're working with this in Rider, what's really cool, and I haven't seen this a lot of other places, this selector is what shows in the HTML file to make this component show up. And if I'm working in here and I say, well, I wonder where this is used, I can hit F12, and it'll search not only in the TypeScript code, but it searches in the HTML as well. So if I click on this, I can see, oh, look, this is used right here. It's a small thing, but it's just another super useful thing for when working in Angular that in other editors that people use for Angular all the time, I haven't seen that work. Also, we're working with TypeScript and Angular. In this case, it will look at all your definition files, and you get nice IntelliSense. So if I want to add another interface here, I can quickly find it, and it'll show me on the right everything about it if it's included in the definition. So that's just great. Oh, if I do that, if I do this, you get help that says, oh, you're implementing an interface and you don't have all the members, so I can easily include the members and make everything work correctly. So that's good. Let's get rid of that. Let's see. So moving along with this, the next thing is, so this is a TypeScript file, though the TypeScript integration in Rider is really good. It doesn't, what's nice about it is it doesn't hide anything from you. You can see, so down here at the bottom, I have my TypeScript. I can see what version is it being run. I can look at the console to see what's going on. Let's see. If I look in here, I can see settings for my TypeScript. Let's see. Yeah, right here. So I can easily just see what version's being used, where it's being used from. In this case, it's a node module. And you have some nice options here for how to work with your TypeScript. I bring this up just because other times with other systems, it's more hidden and it's hard to tell what's really going on. But in here, you really can quickly figure out what's going on. While I'm in here, this is the settings area. This is really great because you can quickly search in here. I don't know, color maybe. So you can look for like the color scheme for your current, what you're working with. You could quickly make changes in here to your color scheme. You can basically do anything, but the search is awesome because look at all the settings, right? How do you ever find anything? It's either Googling it or it's using these search filters. Okay, so that's how the Typescript integration works. So that's just a few features, back end, front end. Now let's show, I'll show you how the debugging works. NextRider has a great integration for debugging for both the back end and the front end. And so the way that works is you've got these debug configurations. In here, you can add a new configuration for about anything that you can think of to debug or run. In our case, I'm running the back end. I'm debugging the back end. There's .NET Core, just a .NET Core executable. And then the front end, I'm debugging with Chrome. So I'm launching a Chrome browser in debug mode and attaching the debugger to that. The way that we run these is you pick what you want to run and you hit debug. And that will build a code and attach the debugger. So that was the back end. Now we're going to use that Node Package Manager to start our Angular front end web server. And once that's up and running, we can, we'll wait for that to get going. It'll just take a second. Once that's up and running, then we can launch Chrome in debug mode, and we should be able to do some debugging. Okay, so now I just choose that I want to debug my Chrome Angular application. Get that up and running. Okay, and then I'm going to take an action here. And then, so here's a breakpoint. So nothing stellar to show here other than the debugging works really well. Same stuff you're usually used to be able to see everything that's happening. If you hit F11, you can step in just like normal. You've got your list down here of every of your different steps that you've taken. If you go back, you can see what all the variables were everywhere that you've gone. So it's nice for stepping through and seeing everything that's happened. So I'm just going to continue with this one. Another thing that's another one of those nice little touches is if you do conditional breakpoints, you can basically say only hit this breakpoint if this condition is met. Then you can do it in here. But what's nice is they added this history window. It's short in this project, but it'll bring up a history of all the different breakpoints, conditional breakpoints that you've used. So instead of having to type this equals this for the kind of 100th time, it's right here, and you can easily select it. So that's a nice feature for the debugging. So that was the kind of back-end debugging. Same thing. I just took another action in the application, and now we're in. Now that we're in a TypeScript file, and same thing. We have access to all the variables, everything that's going on. You have your console, which is the same console you'd see in Chrome. If you were debugging in Chrome, same thing here too. You can step through all your changes. So very capable debugging to work with your full stack application. All right, so now we're going to, I'll let that continue. And then I'm going to stop the debugging session. And I want to leave the database running, but you can see how up here it shows everything that is being debugged right now. So I can easily stop the things that I want to stop. I'll leave the database running. And the next thing we're going to look at is testing. So let's see, let's make sure how I'm doing on time here. Doing okay. Let's see. Where? Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is testing. So let me close all of this stuff and this. And down at the bottom, we have our testing session. You can see if the tests pass or if they fail. Let's see. You can see that the change. Let me roll back this change. There. Okay. So you can see if they passed, if they failed. If they fail, you can see the exceptions that happened. There, you can double click on them and see the tests that you can run. In here, what's a really nice feature is that they have this menu here to the left. So if you're working on a test right here, you can quickly and easily just run or debug your test, set breakpoints, that sort of thing. Another thing in testing that's nice is if you debug out to the right line to the console, within the test results, you'll see to the right here, you can actually see the debug trace. So it's really easy to just see the changes that you've made and know that easily debug what's going on with your tests. So let's see. I'm just going to do a quick check on the time. Looks like it's been about 40 minutes. I'll show a couple more things and then we'll move on to some questions, I think. One area that I think is kind of neat, that's just a neat thing, is the favorites area. So you can create different favorites areas in the IDE. Sometimes in an application, everything's built in layers, and it's hard to find how everything goes together. So if that's the case, I like to create a favorite in here with all the different pieces in the part of the whole stack, like a vertical slice. So I'd have my back end and my front end all here so that I can quickly move through. I might have web pages in here so I can get through to those. That's just a really neat feature that I use a lot. And the last thing I guess I'll mention is the window management. So you probably noticed when I was going around here, but these windows stay open when you open them, and then you close them if you want to close them. In Visual Studio, when you click and it opens over your code, and then you have to kind of click somewhere else for it to close, I find that a little bit harder to use for me personally. So the window management in Rider, I think, is just really slick. So yeah, so I think I'm going to stop my screen sharing now and then see if there's any questions.